All right, now I believe it's been more than a week now since LeBron James passed Wilt Chamberlain for fifth all time in NBA scoring. But I wanted to make another video to try to explain just how dominant Wilt Chamberlain was in his era. Okay. Now I'm not trying to like I guess negate what LeBron James did. It's a remarkable accomplishment. It speaks to his longevity. It speaks to his consistency as a basketball player. And whether or not LeBron James wants to admit it or not, he is a scorer. Okay. And it's an often repeated, annoying phrase that you hear from some of his fans that he's not really a scorer and he's doing this. I mean, he's a scorer. Last I remember, he won a scoring title. And if you win a scoring title, then I'm afraid that makes you a scorer. Because there's a lot of guys in NBA history who are great scorers and never won a scoring title. All right? So, I'm not shitting on LeBron James, but you have to put what LeBron James did into perspective. And by no means, in my opinion, is LeBron James on the same level as an overall player, and particularly as far as dominance, as Wilt Chamberlain. Now, it took LeBron James 112 more games played in comparison to Wilt Chamberlain to surpass him. At the time, LeBron James was in his 1,157th career regular season contest, whereas Wilt Chamberlain played in 1,045 games. Not to mention the fact that starting in 1966, Wilt Chamberlain began to focus on other aspects of basketball and not primarily only scoring. I believe after the 1965-66 season, I believe Wilt Chamberlain, I might be a little off my numbers, but I think he was averaging at that time over 30 shots per game in his career. I want to say it was like 33 shot attempts per game, something like that. He was averaging around 33 shot attempts per game and was averaging better than 39 points per game. In fact, after the 44.8 points per game campaign, the 62-63 season, I believe Wilt was averaging at that time for his career over 42 points per game. So this was a guy who, if he had continued at that pace, and even if you include the decline, he would have been averaging probably 37 points per game in his career. Wilt Chamberlain chose to focus on, at first when he was with the Sixers, he focused on other aspects of basketball, in particular passing. And you can even say that Wilt was being selfish in his passing, and I don't know whether it was just an aspect of Wilt's competitiveness, but he took less shots per game, and the offense was more evenly distributed. He was still the first scorer, but it wasn't like Wilt with 50 and then the next guy was 6 or something like that. Then by the times with the Lakers, Wilt was like the third, fourth, and then sometimes even the last option out there offensively, although he could always turn it on when need be. There was a 45-point game that he had, I believe was in the 1970, what year was it? Somebody can correct me, was it the 73 finals against the Knicks? I think he had a 45-point game. No. 1970 NBA Finals, excuse me. I believe that was game. Oh, Jesus, I'm rusty as hell. It was the game. It was the first full game after Willis Reed was injured. I know that. And then there was the game where he scored 66 points against the Phoenix Suns when he was with the Lakers. And there were countless other memorable scoring performances when the opportunity presented itself. Now, so basically, his record could have been even more amazing had he chose to stay with the primary scoring mentality. If he had the Carmelo Anthony mentality, I'll put it like that. Also, I think another thing that should be stated is how far ahead Wilt Chamberlain was of the original scoring records. Like, there's one thing I hear ESPN pundits say that is incorrect. They'll say, well, when Wilt Chamberlain retired and he broke the NBA record. No. That implies that the next guy under Wilt was like, and people who are young and don't really know NBA history, they'll think, well, okay, the guy under him would have, 28,000 points? No. When Wilt Chamberlain came into the NBA in 1959, all right, this is how it was. The NBA was still a relatively new entity. For the first couple of seasons, the all-time leading scorer was Joe Fulks. He was the league's first big scorer. All right. Then after Joe Fulks, it was George Mikan. George Mikan overtook him and became the active leading scorer. Then for a while, I think it might have been Paul Arizin, but I know for a while it was Neil Johnston. And then by the time Wilt Chamberlain came to the NBA in 1959, the active leading scorer and the all-time leading scorer in NBA history at the time was Dolph Schayes. Do you know how many points Dolph Schayes had at that time? He was the leading scorer in NBA history. 13,000. 13,000. Now, eventually, Dolph Schayes was overtaken by a player that many consider the greatest NBA player of the 1950s. And I think he was the greatest player of the 1950s, even greater than George Mikan, because his whole career encompassed, for the most part, the 1950s. He had dominant seasons. That's Bob Pettit. Bob Pettit retired at the end of the 64-65 campaign, averaging 26 points and 16 rebounds. And he finished with 20,880 points. He was the all-time leading scorer. His record lasted less than a season. By the next season, Wilt Chamberlain had already reached nearly 22,000 points. And when everything was said and done, Wilt Chamberlain scored, of course, 31,419 points. More than 10,000 points above what was the prior record. Over 50% more points scored than the prior record. To put that into perspective, for LeBron James to completely dominate the all-time record, which is 38,387 points, he would have to finish his career with over 57,000 points. Over 57,000. Not including the fact, like I said earlier, that Wilt Chamberlain chose to become a third and fourth option, and sometimes fifth option with the Los Angeles Lakers, only averaging 17 points per game with the Lakers, when earlier in his career he was averaging, probably before the Lakers, he was probably averaging like 34 points per game or something like that. That's just a guesstimate. Um, and also, I remember Wilt Chamberlain saying in interviews that this was when Kareem was approaching his record and surpassed it. He said if he had known that there would have been such an emphasis on numbers and records when he played and how people perceive these records, he would have tried his best to put that scoring mark out of contention for everybody. And I think he would have done that. So that's that. I mean, if there are various players. If Michael Jordan really wanted to, if he was focused on numbers, I think if he was born in the 1990s instead of 1960s, and you have this era where everyone's concerned about numbers, I think Michael Jordan could have obliterated Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record if he wanted to. He only played 1,072 games, and that's a lot of games. But compared to how some of these guys play now, where they play 1,400, 1,500 games, Michael missing the whole 93-94 season, 2/3 of the 95 season, retiring and missing the abbreviated 99 season, entire 2000, 2001, 99, 2000 season, the entire 2000, 2001 season due to retirement. There's no question in my mind, plus the injury he had in 85, 86, where he missed 2/3 of that season. There's no doubt in my mind that Michael Jordan could have easily surpassed 40,000 points. So you have to put all these things into perspective. It's a remarkable thing that LeBron James did, but he still, in my opinion, these are longevity records. I'll say this. Nobody would say Robert Parrish scored 23,000 points in his career. Barkley a little bit ahead of him, 23,757 points. But nobody would say that Robert Parrish was on par with Charles Barkley as a pure scorer. Nobody. He was a fine scorer. He was a good scorer for his position. He was not a guy who was going to put up 28 points